joining us today.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
So you, of course, do sound design for video games, amongst other things. What have you worked on lately?
Right now, I'm actually working on Starhawk. I'm helping those guys to finish up the game and just contributing a little bit here and there for those guys. And then before that, I helped out at the end of Twisted Metal for
nice.
Jaffe. So, yeah, after Uncharted, I've been kind of bouncing around between various projects at Sony, just helping out where I can.
Tell me about the experience of working on Uncharted.
Dream come true.
Good answer.
Yeah, no, seriously, it's pretty much every sound designer's dream is probably to work on guns and explosions, that or Star Wars. And I got to work on Star Wars at my last job, so Guns and Explosions was the next one on the list, and it was amazing. Naughty Dog is super, super talented. They make amazing games, and it's really a treat to work on them.
You know, I have to say, I went to school for audio production, so your job was one that I was hoping to do one day. So getting to talk to you right now is really exciting because I'm actually getting to see what a professional does, what kind of tools they use, and then, of course, we all get to enjoy the end product. So what tools in particular do you use in your day-to-day?
Day-to-day, as far as sound creation, it's all Pro Tools. It's kind of the industry standard around pretty much everywhere. Various people use different tools here and there, but for the most part, it's Pro Tools. But that's sort of where the sound creation ends and the design or implementation begins. And the tools for that are numerous and varied. It depends on which studio you're at. Everything's different. You kind of have the same ideas, but most of it's proprietary. I couldn't even tell you the name.
Man. Is there a lot of Foley involved, or is it all just digital?
Oh, no. I mean, there's tons of Foley. We try to do it whenever possible, honestly, because having brand new sounds in a game is super important, and it makes it just sound alive. And just for instance, like in Uncharted, there's a really small moment when you're in the garage in London and Drake can go up and wiggle the doorknob. And rather than just cut in a stock doorknob, I went and just recorded the doorknob in my office here. Because, I mean, it's fresh. I performed it, so, the timing was matched up. And it makes it sound so much better when you have something fresh in there.
So do you just get your microphone and just hang out in your office and just do it over and over until you get it right?
Yeah, pretty much. That's what I ended up doing, yeah.
Nice. I know you've also worked on a lot of independent video projects and film projects. How is that different from working on video games?
It's hugely different. I mean, there are similarities, obviously, like making sounds themselves is, like I said, in Pro Tools. Working for video, though, it's linear. It's a linear medium. So you make a sound and you cut it to the picture, and the timing is the same every time somebody watches it. You don't have to worry about somebody dying and then having to watch it again or anything like that. So that's something you really have to worry about with games is variety because of repetition. You really have to make one awesome sound. You probably have to make 4 or 5 variations just in case the player sees it over and over again. The other thing that's completely different is, again, implementation, just getting that sound out of Pro Tools and into the game and having it play back the way you want it to play back is a challenge sometimes.
How is that a challenge? Like, what changes going from your Pro Tools setup into the actual game box?
Well, basically, when I build it in Pro Tools, I'm basically assuming a certain perspective or a certain way that the characters or player is going to interact with the sound. But players have total control in games, and they can kind of do whatever the heck they want. So you have to set up the sounds to work based on where the player is at any given moment, and that is just a very difficult task sometimes, especially in a game like Uncharted, where you have extremely cinematic moments that may actually, in fact, change timing based on how well the player is doing. When you're trying to keep the sounds synced up, that can be very, very difficult. In the chateau level, for instance, when you're at the end, spoiler alert, when you're at the end of that level and you're running on the roof as everything's collapsing around you.
Drove me crazy. Sorry, go ahead.
It's hard, but in fact, it actually it will go slower if you die continually, and it actually slows down the animations and everything slows down. And to keep the sound in sync is really tough. We have to really get granular with a lot of the sounds. which is very different than film, because film, you just, hey, the tower's collapsing, cut it in, boom, you're done.
So is that how I finally beat that level? Was it actually slowed down for me?
Potentially, yeah.
That's even worse than saying there's no Santa Claus. You're over there like, we slowed the game down for you, Veronica.
I thought I got really awesome because I had to do it so many times, but no, they just slowed it down for me a little tiny bits. You don't even notice. Just suddenly you're that much better.
It's very, very granular. It's not a huge slowdown, but it's enough to help you out, hopefully.
You're just saying that to make me feel better now, I have a feeling. That's okay.
Maybe
it's okay. It's okay. So when you're playing a video game, what games out there have you been like, wow, the sound design or the sound in general is just really fantastic? Who do you admire in that space?
In games, I mean, the guys up at DICE that do the Battlefield games, I mean, there is none better. Those guys just really do a fantastic job at representing war as like a realistic thing. The other studio that really does a fantastic job is the guys at Visceral, who do Dead Space 2 and Dead Space 1 have really fantastic audio. And I definitely look up to those guys. I actually know a couple of those guys as well from my time at EA. Mm-hmm. But we also, as sound designers in games, like I get inspiration from movies all the time. I mean, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing without Ben Burtt and Star Wars, and that's kind of why I went down the path I did. He's really the biggest inspiration, probably.
So speaking of movies, and Ben Burtt in particular, I know that among movie sound designer, the Wilhelm scream was sort of an inside joke that eventually blew up and everybody became familiar with it. Do you guys have anything that's so cliche as far as video games go, or some kind of in-joke that you guys have?
There's definitely no in-joke. I mean, the Wilhelm scream is definitely found in video games just as much as it is in movies, and I think that's more of a sound designer thing, not necessarily movies versus games. But again, we're all trying to pay homage to Ben. I think when we stick that thing in there. We try to get a little more creative with the implementation. It's not so on the nose. Like, do
you know some secret implementations of the Wilhelm scream that you can share?
Oh yeah, I know. I've done it myself.
Oh, dude, spill the beans. Where did you sneak it in?
Well, in Clone Wars Adventures that I worked on, I actually made there's a battle droid animation where it dies in the tower defense game. And so I processed it the same way that the battle droids are processed. So unless you're really sharp-eared, you're not really going to tell the difference between the normal scream and the Wilhelm scream, but it's in there. And that's just sort of a little Easter egg. And it felt really appropriate because it's Star Wars.
Yeah. There it is.
Was that it?
Yeah, that's it.
Perfect. That sounds about right.
Classic.
Nice. Now we have a question from one of our viewers over on Reddit. Jay Coogan wants to know, I'd like to know what skills you think are necessary for a sound designer for games in today's industry. If you want to get into this field, what kind of skills should you have going in?
If you want to get into the games industry, you really need to know games. That's a super important part, often overlooked. You can't really just come in as a film guy and be successful in games. Without context. You really need to understand the way games work and just the theory behind them, and then how the difference between film sound and game sound is all about gameplay is chief, and you kind of have to support it. But in terms of real technical skill, if you're a good sound designer, like if you have chops in that way, that doesn't hurt either. But really, you just need to understand games. That's really a skill that takes a lot of time.
And how did you get involved? What did you first work on to get into the games industry?
My story is pretty rare and pretty unique. Like, I got very lucky. I've always loved games, and I've always kind of had an idea that I wanted to do sound. And so when I was in college, I kind of saw the logical conclusion of the two coming together. But I actually just made a demo reel. I took the infamous 2005 video of Killzone 2. That was it real? Was it gameplay? Was it not? I took that video and I stripped all the sound out of it and redid it. Whoa. And then when I was done, I put it up on an internet forum asking for just feedback, advice. How can I make this better, basically. But from that, I actually got called from the audio director at EA Chicago at the time, and he said, "Hey, I saw your demo reel online. Do you want to interview for our junior position?" Which wasn't even posted online, so I didn't even know they were hiring. So yeah, I did a couple sound tests for those guys, interviewed out in Chicago, and got along with them real well, and I got the gig there.
Nice.
My first game was Def Jam Icon, which not exactly my style in terms of music or games, but it was really a awesome game to work on for sound designer, because this game's all about sound.
There you go. Yeah, what a great example. So I have to ask, is that your own home studio you've gotten there, or are you at work right now?
He's actually on the Enterprise. I'm almost certain of this.
Yeah, right. No, I wish it was, but no, this is my office at Naughty Dog, actually.
Sweet.
Yeah, I'm actually, it's a working weekend. I've been working all day yesterday. I was working today before this, so. Good
secret projects you can't tell us about just yet?
Yeah, one of them is a secret project. I actually thought it was going to be announced by now, but things change very rapidly in that regard. And I've also been working on some Starhawk today. They're coming to the end of their development, so. And plus, they have the public beta, which is getting patched and updated pretty consistently.
Very cool. Well, thanks so much for being on the show, Rob. Where can people follow you online?
You guys can follow me at Rob Krekel, all one word, on Twitter. Feel free to ping me with questions. I'm always trying to help out younger sound designers or people who are interested in it. That's the best place to reach me. I'm on Twitter probably more than I should be.
Well, I'll come to you for some questions if I decide for a career change at some point. If I want to get back into the sound industry. All right, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.